Ralph Lauren's own board of directors fired him from the company he created. At 68 years old, after building Polo Ralph Lauren into a $7.4 billion fashion empire, the man who transformed American style found himself locked out of his own boardroom. Security guards escorted him from the Manhattan headquarters while his hand-picked executives watched in silence. But how did a tie salesman from the Bronx create one of the world's most recognizable luxury brands only to face such devastating betrayal? The answer reveals a story of vision, determination, and the brutal realities of corporate power. Ralph Lauren was born Ralph Lipschitz in 1939 in the South Bronx, the youngest of 4 children. His father Frank painted houses for a living, earning barely enough to keep the family afloat. Their apartment was cramped, with Ralph sharing a bedroom with his brothers while his parents slept on a fold-out couch in the living room. Even as a child, Ralph was obsessed with style and presentation. While other kids wore hand-me-downs, he spent his paper route money on clothes, believing that how you dressed determined how people saw you. His brothers mocked his vanity, but Ralph understood something they didn't. Image was everything. After graduating high school, Ralph worked days at a tie manufacturer called A. Rivetson Company while studying business at night school. He earned $45 per week, barely enough to cover his train fare and lunch, but he absorbed everything about the fashion business. He watched how the expensive ties were constructed, studied the fabrics, and memorized which designs sold best. In 1967, at age 28, Ralph convinced his boss to let him create his own tie collection. Traditional ties were narrow and conservative, but Ralph had a different vision. He wanted to make ties wider, more colorful, and luxurious. When his boss saw the prototypes, he was horrified. "These ties are too wide," his boss said. "Nobody will buy them. You're making a huge mistake." But Ralph believed in his vision. He scraped together $50,000 in borrowed money and rented a small drawer in the Empire State Building. From that single drawer, he began selling his wide, expensive ties under the name Polo. Department store buyers initially rejected his designs, calling them too flashy and overpriced. Ralph faced rejection after rejection. Bloomingdale's turned him down. Saks said no. Even smaller boutiques refused to carry his ties. For months, he made no sales, watching his savings disappear while living on hot dogs and coffee. Then Norman Hilton, a high-end menswear store, agreed to try 6 dozen ties. Within 2 weeks, they had sold every single one and ordered more. Other stores took notice. By the end of 1968, Ralph had generated $500,000 in tie sales from his Empire State Building drawer. Success came rapidly. In 1970, Ralph expanded into menswear, creating complete outfits that captured an idealized American lifestyle. His designs evoked polo players, English countryside estates, and Ivy League campuses. Women began buying his shirts and wearing them as dresses, so Ralph launched women's clothing in 1971. By 1972, Polo Ralph Lauren was generating $10 billion in annual revenue. Ralph moved his operation to an elegant townhouse on East 55th Street, creating an atmosphere that felt more like a gentleman's club than a fashion house. Every detail was carefully orchestrated to reinforce the brand's luxury positioning. The company went public in 1997, with Ralph maintaining 85% voting control. The stock opened at $26 per share and quickly rose to $45. Ralph's personal stake was worth over $3 billion. Wall Street analysts praised his business acumen and creative vision. But success created new pressures. Public shareholders demanded consistent growth and higher profits. Ralph's perfectionist approach to design often conflicted with financial efficiency. He would spend months perfecting a single shirt, obsessing over button placement and fabric weight, while accountants calculated mounting costs. The board of directors, led by outside investors and institutional shareholders, grew frustrated with Ralph's management style. They complained that he made decisions based on artistic vision rather than financial data. Board meetings became tense confrontations between Ralph's creative instincts and shareholders' demands for profitability. In 2007, during a particularly contentious board meeting, Chairman Peter Strump delivered an ultimatum. The company's earnings had disappointed Wall Street for 3 consecutive quarters. Shareholders were losing confidence, and the stock price had dropped 40% from its peak. "Ralph, you need to step back from day-to-day operations," Strump said. "The board has voted to bring in professional management. Your role will be limited to creative oversight." Ralph was stunned. This was his company, his vision, his life's work. He had built Polo Ralph Lauren from nothing, creating jobs for thousands of employees and generating billions of shareholder value. Now his own board was treating him like an incompetent manager.
"You're making a mistake," Ralph replied. "This company is my name, my reputation, my legacy. You can't run Polo Ralph Lauren without Ralph Lauren." The boardroom fell silent. These were men who had known Ralph for decades, who had profited enormously from his success. But business was business, and Wall Street was demanding change. The vote was unanimous. Ralph Lauren was fired as CEO of Polo Ralph Lauren, effective immediately. Security guards appeared within minutes, escorting Ralph from the building while employees watched in shock. The man who created one of America's most successful fashion brands was now banned from his own headquarters. News of his termination leaked to the media within hours, creating headlines around the world. Ralph's lawyers immediately went to work. They discovered that while the board could fire him as CEO, they couldn't remove him as chairman or eliminate his controlling stake in the company. Ralph still owned 85% of voting shares, giving him ultimate power over major corporate decisions. Within 72 hours, Ralph called an emergency shareholders meeting. Using his majority control, he voted to dissolve the entire board of directors and fired every executive who had supported his removal. The same security guards who had escorted him out were now removing his former allies. Peter Strom, the chairman who had delivered Ralph's termination notice, found his own access cards deactivated when he arrived at work the next morning. The corporate coup had been completely reversed. Ralph immediately rehired himself as CEO and restructured the board with loyal supporters. He then launched an aggressive expansion strategy, opening new stores worldwide and diversifying into home furnishings, fragrances, and restaurant concepts. The company's revenue grew from $4.2 billion to $6.3 billion over the next 5 years. The stock price recovered all its losses and reached new highs. Shareholders who had demanded Ralph's removal now celebrated his return as a masterstroke of corporate governance. Wall Street analysts who had criticized his leadership style praised his strategic vision and brand management expertise. Today, Polo Ralph Lauren generates over $6.2 billion in annual revenue across 467 stores worldwide. Ralph's personal net worth exceeds $6.1 billion, making him one of the wealthiest fashion designers in history. The company employs over 26,000 people in 65 countries. The same boardroom where Ralph was fired now displays a portrait of him above the conference table. New directors are required to study his biography and understand the company's founding principles before joining the board. Corporate governance policies explicitly protect his creative authority and strategic decision-making power. Ralph's story demonstrates that true entrepreneurs don't just build companies, they embody them. When shareholders and boards lose sight of that connection, they risk destroying the very vision that created their wealth. Sometimes the person everyone wants to fire is the only one who truly understands what makes the machine work. The Thai salesman from the Bronx proved that vision beats consensus, and that knowing your worth means never letting others define your value.